Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad Gita as it is, chapter number 1, text number 1. Dhritarashtra Uvacha Dharmakshetre Kurukshetre Samaveta Yujotsavaha Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kimakurvata Sanjaya. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? Purport. Bhagavad Gita is a widely read theistic science summarized in the Gita Mahatmya, glorification of the Gita. There it says that one should read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly with the help of a person who is a devotee of Sri Krishna and try to understand it without personally motivated interpretations. The example of clear understanding is there in the Bhagavad Gita itself, in the way the teaching is understood by Arjuna, who heard the Gita directly from the Lord. If someone is fortunate enough to understand the Bhagavad Gita in that line of disciplic succession without motivated interpretation, then he surpasses all studies of Vedic wisdom and all the scriptures of the world. One will find in the Bhagavad Gita all that is contained in other scriptures, but the reader will also find things which are not to be found elsewhere. That is the specific standard of the Gita. It is a perfect theistic science because it is directly spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. The topics discussed by Dhritarashtra and Sanjaya, as described in the Mahabharata, form the basic principle for this great philosophy. It is understood that this philosophy evolved on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, which is a sacred place of pilgrimage from the immemorial time of the Vedic age. It was spoken by the Lord when he was present personally on this planet for the guidance of mankind. The word Dharmakshetri, a place where religious rituals are performed, is significant because on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, the Supreme Personality of Godhead was present on the side of Arjuna. Dhritarashtra, the father of the Kurus, was highly doubtful about the possibility of his son's ultimate victory. In his doubt, he inquired from his secretary Sanjaya, what did they do? He was confident that both his sons and the sons of his younger brother Pandu were assembled in that field of Kurukshetra for a determined engagement of the war. Still, his inquiry is significant. He did not want a compromise between the cousins and brothers, and he wanted to be sure of the fate of his sons on the battlefield. Because the battle was arranged to be fought at Kurukshetra, which is mentioned elsewhere in the Vedas as a place of worship, even for the denizens of heaven, Dhritarashtra became very fearful about the influence of the holy place on the outcome of the battle. He knew very well that this would influence Arjuna and the sons of Pandu favorably because by nature they were all virtuous. Sanjaya was a student of Vyasa, and therefore, by the mercy of Vyasa, Sanjaya was able to envision the battlefield of Kurukshetra even while he was in the room of Dhritarashtra. And so, Dhritarashtra asked him about the situation on the battlefield. Both the Pandavas and the sons of Dhritarashtra belong to the same family, but Dhritarashtra's mind is disclosed herein. He deliberately claimed only his sons as Kurus, and he separated the sons of Pandu from the family heritage. One can thus understand the specific position of Dhritarashtra in his relationship with the nephews, the sons of Pandu. As in the paddy field, the unnecessary plants are taken out, so it is expected from the very beginning of these topics that in the religious field of Kurukshetra, where the father of religion, Sri Krishna, was present, the unwanted plants like Dhritarashtra, son Duryodhana, and others would be wiped out, and the thoroughly religious persons headed by Yudhishthira would be established by the Lord. This is the significance of the words Dharmakshetre and Kurukshetre, apart from their historical and Vedic importance. Om Ajnanathimmirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshur Amritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are starting the Bhagavad Gita with chapter number 1 today. And as we can see, the situation of Dhritarashtra, the blind king. Dhritarashtra was not only materially blind, but he was also spiritually blind. We can see that. And that is why he was so fearful. He was fearful that, his sons he knew were irreligious. He himself was irreligious. And so he knew that his sons are not going to win this battle of Kurukshetra. Now, one may say, why are we talking about battle and war, but come to think of it, we go through a battle every day in our lives, right? We go through a kind of a war. Sometimes it's within our mind. Sometimes it is with others in the family, relatives, friends, boss, colleagues, anybody. You see, sometimes it's our job, our relationship, sometimes as a parent, So we can see that our heart is actually like a battleground, like the battle of Kurukshetra, in the battlefield. Similarly, our hearts are like that. So how do we deal with these battles in our lives? That is a big question. And that is what Bhagavad Gita is teaching us, that if we start living in a conscious way, in the right consciousness, then we will be able to win over these battles which are in our hearts. Now, Arjuna, in this chapter, we see he has a question for Krishna. How can I fight with my loved ones? You see, his grandfather, his teacher, his cousins, they were all on the opposite side, and he was supposed to fight them. So he is, don't we come across such situations in our lives also where we have to fight against our relatives? If someone is doing wrong, we put our foot down and we fight for it, you see. So here, Arjuna wants to know, how can I fight with my loved ones? And Arjuna is being taught now. From chapter 2, we will see Krishna will teach Arjuna how to live in a conscious way, not unconsciously, in the sense, just eat, sleep, and be merry. Life is for fun. No, this human form of life is a life of responsibility. We have intelligence, we have philosophical intelligence, by we can inquire, who am I? Why am I suffering in this material world? Where can I go where there is permanent peace and happiness? That is conscious living. So Bhagavad Gita is teaching us how not only to become conscious in the right way, but also how to become spiritually conscious. Very, very important. You see, we cannot live our human life randomly. You see, oh, whatever comes, fine, whatever, that's fine. No, we have to be very conscious in our human form of life. So the Bhagavad Gita is giving us knowledge by which we can lead this human form of life. When we buy a car or we buy some expensive gadgets, for our home, along with it comes an owner's manual, which tells us how to operate that new car or how to operate the new gadget. Similarly, this human form of life is like a machine, it's like a gadget. And along with comes the owner's manual, which is the Bhagavad Gita. You see, the Bhagavad Gita teaches us how to run this machinery, which we call this material body. So we need to understand from Bhagavad Gita what is the purpose of human form of life. You know, in the Vedas, it is said, excuse me, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire. We cannot expect the animals, the cats and dogs, you know, to inquire, oh, why am I a cat? Why am I a dog? No, they don't have that intelligence. All in the only intelligence they have is where to find food, where to sleep, you know, how to defend myself. That's all the intelligence they have. They don't have intelligence like we do. So, Athato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire about this human form of life. This human form of life is very precious. Even the time is very precious. You see, every moment that is passing by, we are losing it. We cannot buy back time. I cannot say, well, I have $1 million and I want to be 16 years old again. No, that is gone. You see, that time is gone. We cannot get it back. So, Bhagavad Gita is teaching us how to lead this human form of life in a conscious way, not only just conscious way, but in the right consciousness. So the question may arise, what is so special about the Bhagavad Gita, right? Why should I hear or why should I learn about the Bhagavad Gita? Krishna tells us, he'll tell us in chapter 2, that an intelligent person does not remain entrapped in the material body. You see, we are spirit souls. We learn in chapter 2, we are spirit souls that is situated in the heart of this material body, and it is conditioned and it is entrapped. So the soul is entrapped by the material body. So Bhagavad Gita teaches us how not to remain entrapped, but to free ourselves and step by step understand, you know, how to be free and how to regain our real spiritual life. So now, you know, anything that we do in life requires basic faith, right? If I want to travel by public transportation from point A to point B, I need to have faith that this bus that I'm going to hop into is a bona fide bus. You know, it's run by the government. And because it is run by the government, the driver has a driver's license and the driver knows how to go from point A to point B. That basic faith I need to have, and then I hop into the bus. Similarly, we need to have basic faith, as the Bhagavad Gita says, Sri Bhagavana Uvacha, the Supreme Lord said. So we need to have that basic faith that Bhagavad Gita is spoken by the Supreme Lord himself, you see. So that is very, very important. And then once we start getting on knowledge, we can start building up on our faith and make it firm. So this first chapter is talking about millions of soldiers who had gathered in this holy place of Kurukshetra to fight. So there was a fight between the religious and the irreligious people. Now we can see in the first chapter that the climax is fast approaching. Who will win? Who will survive? Will good triumph over evil, right? So battle is about to begin. So the first 27 verses of chapter 1 are talking about the setting up of the scene in the battlefield. You know, the you know, who is standing where, you know, who all are taking part in, you know, so many names are given of soldiers who are gathered there to fight. And you know, this first verse that I recited today is spoken by, that's the only verse spoken by Dhritarashtra, who's a blind king. And you know, we can see the mind of Dhritarashtra being disclosed here. You know, he being irreligious, spiritually blind, greedy, his son's irreligious, you know, so many things on his side. But on the other side, he knew that the 5 brothers, the Pandavas, the sons of Pandu, they were very religious. They were pious people. Above all that, Krishna was with them on their side. Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we see Dhritarashtra is afraid. He is frightened. He kind of knows that his sons are not going to win, but still he has a hope that his sons will win. And he's hoping that these 5 religious brothers will die in the battlefield, which of course is not going to happen. Now, why is Dhritarashtra thinking in these terms? Is because he was very greedy. He was a greedy person. And not only that, he was very envious. You know, envy is very dangerous. It is one of our biggest enemies, we can say, because when a person is envious, then there is a lot of contamination in the consciousness. So here we see that Dhritarashtra, he is sitting in his palace, in his room, and his secretary Sanjaya, who has got the spiritual vision by his spiritual master, that he can sit in the palace and he can see what's going on in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So he is having a conversation here with his secretary. Dhritarashtra is having this conversation. Now, it is said in this chapter that the commander of each army, you know, religious, irreligious, both armies, they were very proud of their soldiers on their side, you know. And Dhritarashtra's oldest son, Duryodhana, it is said was a great politician. Besides being greedy, envious, irreligious, etc., etc., he was also a great politician. And it is said that he, all his life, he lived in an irreligious way. You know, he was, I mean, a lot of demoniac qualities were there in him. It is said that he was lusty, he was proud also, and above all, he was an illusion. And what was the illusion? That he's the greatest man in the whole creation, and he should be the king of the whole and entire creation, etc., etc. But on the other hand, the Pandavas, the religious 5 brothers, they were very compassionate. Even though, see, we can see that here Arjuna, who is one of the brothers, you know, one of the Pandavas, he knew that Dhritarashtra had, and his sons had been very mean to them, had been very partial to them, took away their kingdom, etc. But still, Arjuna is so compassionate. He doesn't want to fight with them. He doesn't want to kill them. That is the sign of a pure devotee. Pious people have not only compassion, but they have great faith in the Supreme Lord Krishna. And that is why Arjuna, he chose Krishna on his side in the battlefield. So Krishna gave a choice. So here was Arjuna and here was Duryodhana, the religious guy. And Krishna said, well, you both choose. One of you can choose me and one of you can choose my army. Arjuna chose Krishna because he knew wherever there is the Supreme Lord, there is victory. Whereas Duryodhana wanted the army. So he thought, by Krishna's army, I can defeat the Pandavas. So you see, before the war started, Arjuna, since Krishna was his chariot driver, Arjuna requested Krishna to take him in the middle of both the armies. Why? Because he wanted to see who all have come to fight against him. And what did he see? He saw his grandfather, his cousins, his brothers, his teacher, all of them on the opposite side. And in this chapter, verse number 27 is when we hear that Arjuna, he becomes overwhelmed with compassion. He doesn't want to kill his relatives. He tells Krishna that my limbs, you know, I can feel that my whole body is shivering. My mouth is drying up. You see, so it is mentioned, Prabhupada says, it's not because Arjuna was afraid. Arjuna was not afraid of the battle, but he was feeling very compassionate towards his cousins and relatives and his grandfather and his teacher. You see, these are the symptoms of someone who is soft-hearted. You see, these such symptoms we should understand Arjuna had, not because he was weak, not because he was not strong enough to fight, no, but it was because of compassion. And that is the characteristic of a pure devotee of the Lord. So he tells Krishna that my whole body is trembling looking at my relatives, and my bow, that bow and arrow that he had, the bow which is called the Gandiva bow, he said, is slipping from my hand. My skin is burning. I'm unable to stand. I'm forgetting myself. I don't see what good is there in killing all my people. I don't want such a victory, at the cost of the lives of my relatives, my loved ones. You see? So Prabhupada in this verse number 27 purport, he is giving the reasons. What are the reasons Arjuna was giving to not fight? He wanted to run, go away from the battlefield. And he says, reason was compassion. Excuse me. He also said, if my loved ones are, dead, then with whom will I enjoy? And then he said, when so many soldiers will be killed, there'll be destruction of dynasty, and I will get a lot of sinful reactions because I'm killing. So he started giving different reasons not to fight. And he says, I'm not prepared to fight. What pleasure will I get by fighting all these relatives of mine? Sin will overcome me. And because I am going to kill, even though they are aggressors, I'm going to kill them. So I will be punished. There will be sinful reactions. So Arjuna was giving these reasons, and above and all, he gave a very important point. He said, I have heard from the disciplic succession, that one should not kill. Now, why is he mentioning disciplic succession? To give us an indication that it's very important to hear Bhagavad Gita from a bona fide source, from disciplic successions. For instance, when we read the Bhagavad Gita, after the introduction, if you open the last page of introduction, you will see the disciplic succession, the bona fide disciplic succession. Krishna spoke it to Brahma, Brahma spoke it to Narada, Narada spoke it to Vyasadev. Like that, it comes down. And number 32 is Srila Prabhupada. So his spiritual master, Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, spoke it to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada spoke it to Gopal Krishna Maharaj. Gopal Krishna Maharaj spoke it to me. And now I am giving this knowledge to you. This is disciplic succession, bona fide authority. So Arjuna is making a point that I have heard from disciplic succession. So, like we read in today's purport by Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada very clearly says we should hear Bhagavad Gita or read Bhagavad Gita very scrutinizingly. It is not just a random book. It is a science of self-realization. It is scientific knowledge. So, in the purport, Prabhupada says, theistic science. It is a science. So we should hear it in strict disciplic succession from a devotee of Sri Krishna. Then we will be able to understand the Bhagavad Gita. And we know, excuse me, Bhagavad Gita is perfect knowledge, which is coming from perfect source, which is Krishna, the Supreme Lord himself. So when we hear from the disciplic succession, we are assured that the authenticity of the data is maintained. There are no interpretations. There are no additions or subtractions. There are no opinions. right? So it is coming down as it is. So we see here Arjuna, he is overcome with grief out of compassion for his relatives. And he set aside his bow and he sat down very, very, morose and sad and lamenting. You see, Arjuna, he is trying to tell Krishna, it is better I give up my weapons, let the other party come and kill me. I will not pick up any arms, let them come and kill me. Or he says, I don't want this big kingdom. I can go and beg and live out of begging. Or I can go to the Himalayas and I can, meditate or something, renounce everything. You see, why is he saying all that? Because he is overwhelmed with grief, looking at the relatives that he has to find. So when he is, we can see how disturbed he is. So when he's talking like that, we can see that his compassion is misused. Real compassion is for the spirit soul. He is showing compassion for the material body, right? He is afraid to kill the material bodies of his relatives. That is misused compassion. What is real compassion? Real compassion is for the spirit soul. Body is destroyed after a certain time, right? This material body doesn't live forever. We have seen so many of our relatives, they have given up their bodies because material body is temporary. But the spirit soul is eternal. Krishna says, Mamai Vamsha Jivaloke Jivabhuta Sanatana. Sanatana means eternal. Why? Because he says we are part of the Supreme Lord Krishna, and that is why the spirit soul is eternal. It never dies. You see? So here we see misplaced compassion of Arjuna. Instead of showing compassion for the spirit soul, he is showing compassion for the material body. Why are we having these Bhagavad Gita classes? So that we can understand the difference between body and soul, so that we can take on knowledge and feel compassion for the soul. This knowledge is showing compassion for the soul, making us understand we are eternal and we are changing bodies. Let us stop this cycle of birth and death. Let us go to a permanent place where the eternal soul has a spiritual body in the spiritual world, permanently happy and peaceful. That is the purpose of this Bhagavad Gita. So from a next chapter onwards, we will learn the difference between body and soul. How instead of, say, someone is drowning in an ocean, instead of going and just saving the shirt of that person is not good enough. We need to save the person. So this material body is the covering for the spirit soul, like the shirt. So instead of just saving this material body, we need to save the soul. That is real compassion, and that is right consciousness. If the person is only thinking about I, me, mine, myself, mine, everything about me, that is related to this material body. That is not the right consciousness. The right consciousness is I am the spirit soul. I am part of the Supreme Lord, and I am eternal. So we should not, we should of course take care of the body, but we should also take care of the soul. Just like we feed the body, we need to feed the soul. And what is the food for the soul? It is Bhagavad Gita. So when we start living our human life in a conscious way, in other words, follow the owner's manual, which is the Bhagavad Gita, then we will understand what is the purpose of human form of life. Just as when we are driving, we are conscious. We are conscious of the traffic lights. We are conscious of our lane. We are conscious of all the other cars around us. We are conscious. Our driving is conscious, right? Similarly, we need to be conscious of our mind. You see, a mind can take us to different places. So we have to be conscious of all our activities. All the activities that we are performing, we need to make sure that we are always conscious. We are conscious of our mind, because if we are not conscious of our mind, we will not be able to really lead a conscious life the right way. You see, and all this is possible when we take on knowledge from the Bhagavad Gita. It's very, very simple. It's not complicated at all. Bhagavad Gita is teaching us a simple process by how we can learn to be pious, how we can learn to be compassionate towards the soul, not just the body, how we can feed the soul on a daily basis. Like in every class, I talk about mantra meditation, chanting the holy names of the Lord. That is the food for the soul, just like we have food for the body. So, knowledge can help us to understand how to live in the right consciousness. Because, see, this human life is a life of responsibility. We cannot live like animals, like cats and dogs, just eat, sleep, mate, and defend. No. Human life is meant for something more than just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. No, we have to, Bhagavad Gita is training us, guiding us how to lead a conscious life. So the actual Bhagavad Gita starts from chapter 2, verse number 2, when Krishna will start speaking. You see, right now this first chapter is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield. So we are getting an idea that what is this war in Kurukshetra all about, who all are present, and what is going on in Arjuna's mind, how he is feeling so much compassion for his relatives, and how he is overwhelmed with grief. So this is what we learn. So when Krishna starts speaking the Bhagavad Gita, which of course we will learn in next class, next Sunday, about actually chapter 2 is entitled Contents of the Gita Summarized. So we will learn the summary of the Bhagavad Gita in chapter 2, wherein the very first instruction Krishna gives is, you are not this body, but you are the spirit soul. So he will enlighten us through Arjuna by answering Arjuna's question. So since we are spirit souls, and logically, we should lead a spiritual life because we are spirit souls. So spirituality should be an intrinsic part of our lives. We must try hard to lead a spiritual life. In other words, our consciousness should be spiritualized. So when we hear Bhagavad Gita, especially on a daily basis or at least once a week on Sundays, and if we practice mantra meditation on a daily basis, then that will help us to focus our minds on this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, and it's going to help us to lead our lives in a conscious way and not just randomly. You see? So it's important that we recognize that this human form of life is a precious gift from the Lord. Attitude of gratitude. Thanks to the Supreme Lord Krishna that we have human form of life in this birth. So what will happen? With this human form of life and the philosophical intelligence that is being given to us by the Lord, we will be able to understand Bhagavad Gita. And what are the benefits of Bhagavad Gita? Bhagavad Gita will lead one to a healthy body, stress-free mind, sharp intelligence, and happy souls. That is the result of understanding the Bhagavad Gita. Now, since I talked about the mantra meditation, I am not sure if anyone is joining us for the first time. I think it is Shashi and Shan and Pradeepa and probably Satyanarayan who have joined us for the first time. So what we will do is we'll do mantra meditation for just a few minutes, and in the chat I will just post some links. If you are interested, you can use these links, and at the bottom of the link you will see the mantra that we are going to chant just now, just for a few minutes, so that we get a hang of it. And if you can chant this on a daily basis, that would be awesome, and you will see the difference yourself in your consciousness. Okay. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So you see, I chanted only 10 times, and this whole mala, which is called, has 108 beads in them. So if we chant 108 times, it takes about maybe 7 to 8 minutes. So if you can please start chanting, that would be really nice, and you will see the difference yourself. So I'm going to end now, and we will meet next Sunday at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. And if anyone has any questions or comments,